For this aerial dance class, I'm going to focus on the one knee transition. I'm going to show you how to do the one knee transition and then how you can stylize it and make it into a dance using some of our other foundational skills like circus pose or hip key. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is put the hammock at the correct height for you. I've put it around my ribs because I'm going to assume maybe the student that I'm teaching doesn't have the strength yet to fully pull themselves up and over and into the hammock. If you can't pull yourself into a high hammock, that doesn't mean that you can't do aerial dance. You can do aerial dance with the hammock low at your hip or super high. It just depends on how you're going to choose to stylize it. I think it's really important to do all of the tricks really low at first. That way we can be more safe, closer to the ground, and as a teacher you would be able to see your students and be able to help them if you need. So I'm just going to put it around my rib height so I don't have to climb up and in. I'm just going to be able to swing it around behind me and get into the cross position. So that's how we're going to start a one knee transition. A one knee transition goes from the cross position up into a seated position. So we're going to open it up like a loop and bring it around behind us like a backpack. So the hammock is in my upper rib cage. If I sink my weight into it, I'm in my cross position. Of course, I could be just hanging out here, spinning, or I could be working conditioning. All of those could be wonderful things that we do in the cross position. From the cross position, for the one knee transition, in order to get up to seated, I need to bring one leg up. I'm going to bring my leg up towards the center and then bring it through the center and bend it and hook it on to the hammock. Whatever leg I'm going to kick up, that's the side I'm going to hook onto. My other leg is going to be probably bent while I'm hanging since the hammock is low, but then once I kick, I'm going to have this little split action so that other leg that's not going to hook is going to be extended. I think it's important to extend that leg. That way we're knowing where the energy is going and that we can make sure that we're not bringing both of them up and through. Because we're going to be going backwards a little bit, I'm going to be using my hands to help me. I'm going to be pressing the hammock away from me. This is going to help get my shoulders back so that I can get my leg up to hook. It's also a lot of core, so I'll show you some conditioning that you can do to help prepare you for this one knee transition. The other thing is that as we're pushing back, we are having a little bit of this back action going, but our neck needs to stay neutral. Do not throw your head back. Stay looking at the action, what's happening, looking at that foot and that leg that's going to hook. All right, so let me show you now of what I just explained. So we're going to start in this cross position. We're going to have our shoulders drawn down, and we're going to be pressing the hammock forward, and this is going to help the shoulders come back. So because it's nice and low, I'm going to have my knees bent. I'm going to press, bring my split action up, my right leg has come up, and I'm going to hook it to the right. Notice that this leg is extending out now. Once it hooks to the right, I have to release my hand. So from the cross, bringing the feet up, split action, and then as I hook, I'll have to release that same hand. So as you can see, there's a lot of core going on to bring the legs up. As you are working this, you can have little swinging action to help give you some momentum. So from here, we can work on a little swing, and on our kick forward, we can kick into that split and hook. So I want to make sure that I'm keeping my knees bent while I'm hanging down, but as I get them up to horizontal, that's when I'm going to want to go into that split. So let's watch that again. As I swing up, horizontal split, and hook and release. Next step, once you've hooked it, you draw the heel towards the bottom, okay? This is going to create a really nice hooking action. Keep your core in and your ribs in. Once we've released the same arm as that hooked leg, then we're going to bring both hands above our leg that's hooked. Both hands up high, but keeping our shoulders engaged. Now we're going to pull up and let our body come through the center into a one leg hang with both hands holding. We can get up to a seated position from reaching one hand to the other side, sliding the hips all the way back, and bringing that other foot in to seated. From seated, we can come forward, make sure I'm bending because my hammock is low, coming forward, back into our cross position. So let's talk about this a little bit more. Once you've gone into that split and hooked that leg, then you release, same arm as hooked leg. To that now get up to seated, you're going to bring both hands above that hooked knee, pull your shoulders through the center, and then sit your hips back, and you'll have one leg in, one leg out. Both hands are now holding the opposite side. So because I had my right leg in, both hands would be holding on to the left side. From there, to transition to seated, I reach my right hand to the right side, sit my hips back to bring my free leg in, my left leg in to come to seated. It's really important to draw your hips back when you're trying to get your foot in or your leg in. If you have your hips back, it creates more space for that leg to get in. If you have the hammock up higher on the leg, which I'll show you right now, it's a little bit tighter to get that other leg in. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Split, hook, release. Both hands come above your right leg. Well, I have my right leg hooked, both hands above my right leg. I'm having my right hand on top, bending through the center. So now if I had my hammock up the leg, and I'm going to try to get my other foot in, I got to have a lot of flexibility to get it in, right? So if I instead sit my hips back, sliding the hammock towards the knee, now I have all this space, and it's so much easier to come up to seated. All right. The other thing is that this is a one knee transition to come up to seated, but it's also one knee transition just to get into one leg in, one leg out, and holding the opposite side. This is a prep for when you have your one leg in and both hands to the opposite side. That's actually how you start to do candy cane and back balance and some other postures like our circus pose with one leg in, holding with one arm. So even though it's a transition all the way to sit, it doesn't mean that you have to go all the way to sit. You can actually stop with one leg in and one leg out, and one leg hang. Or you can continue to transition all the way up to seated. First thing that I like to teach is how to get up to seated. Then, once the student is comfortable with that, and once you're comfortable with that, we can then do some transitions to make it into more of a dance sequence. But first, let's do the other side, all right? So in the cross position, we're going to swing, push the hammock away from us, come into a split, hooking now the left leg, releasing that left arm. Both hands are going to come above that left knee, pulling my shoulders through the center, reaching one hand over, sliding the hips back, but keeping the shoulders engaged and the core active so we can come up to seated. Very important that we practice and do this on both sides. A way that we can start to progress is to do it with really good form. And knowing where we're placing all of our energy and keeping our neck neutral and doing it with a smooth transition and very easily. Once we are doing this with ease and smooth, then try adding a spin to it. That would make it a little bit more progressive. So let's do it now with a little spin. Holding in a spin, pressing it through, split, hooking that right knee. Both hands are going to come above, pull through the center, reach one hand to the other side, and come up to seated. So that's one way that I really love progressing all of the postures or the tricks is by doing it on both sides, doing it with ease and fluidity, and then trying it spinning. For those that don't like spinning, you don't have to, but whenever you add a spin, it makes it more fun for some of us, and it might make others dizzy. But when you add a spin, a lot of times it becomes a little bit more challenging, but also makes it feel more like a dance. So with the one knee transition, if we're not in a hurry to get straight up to seated, we could add a circus pose once we got to that one leg in and one leg out. Pretty simple from there. Circus pose for us is when you have one leg in the hammock and you're holding with one arm. So I'm going to add a little elbow hook, and that's going to be my transitional pose because I'm not going to be in a rush to get right away up to seated. Another thing that I want to add after that is a little hip key of just keying over onto my hips, and this is going to be from the circus pose. It's going to be where I would be leaning maybe out to one side. The hip key is going to then bring my opposite hip over so I can lean over on the other side. This really hasn't changed anything. I still have one leg in and one leg out. But with our circus pose, I have one leg in, and it depends if you're going to have same arm or opposite arm. There's so many variations that you're going to have an opportunity to try and do. For me, I'm going to be using the same leg that's hooked in the same arm. So then for my hip key, I'll have my right knee hooked. For my hip key, instead of having my right hip on the top now, I'm going to switch and bring my left hip on the top, but still my right leg will be in. So it's just going to be a little bit of a transition that will look like another skill and look like a whole different pose that I'm doing, and yet I'm really just shifting my hips from one side to the next. But this is what dance is about. This is the beauty of aerial dance, of how you can make something, one trick, look so different depending on if you're going to do it really graceful or if you're going to do it like really crazy. You know, it's like all about sharing your character or your personality of the moment. So let me just show you what I mean, and I'll do it without spinning first. So from our cross, we're going to come into our one knee transition, right? Releasing this arm. I'm going to take a pause here and actually now come into a double stag and just follow my hand through looking at it. And then as I bring both hands to above that knee, I'm going to pull in, right, and hook now my elbow to come into the circus pose. This transition to go into hip key, I need to bring my free arm up and swing my left leg up and over to transition on to my right side, where I can now release my hands. To exit, as you'll notice, I haven't really gone anywhere or done anything. I still have one leg in and one leg out. But if I want to come to seated and bring my other leg in, I'm really close. So I would want to sit back so I could then bring my leg in to seated. So we're going to do one knee transition, go into circus pose, and then switch over to our hip key. All right? So let's try this now with a spin, and I'll just take some pauses. The arm variations can be whatever you choose them to be. I'm just going to take a moment right now just so you can see what's happening. Is usually just to like reach one arm out, follow it through, bringing it back, and then transitioning to the next. So remember, when you're in that circus pose, that free arm has to get, well, doesn't have to, but at first you're going to need the strength. Get back up onto the hammock to help pull your hip up and over to that hip key. all right? And that free leg, so let's say we're doing it on the right, my right leg is hooked. My left leg is free to do whatever it wants in that circus pose, but I'm gonna use it to do a big, nice little like swing up and over to help get my hips up and over. That leg is gonna help with momentum to bring me into the hip key. I love to bend my knees in the hip key. It makes me feel more secure. But also when you shift over into the hip key, just a reminder, make sure that you're hinging in the hips. That's going to hook you in. So now let's put this all together. You know, it starts as one trick at a time, but now we can link it together with a little spin and enjoy a little freedom of movement and a little aerial dance. All right, so we're going to be doing cross to one knee transition, circus pose variation to hip key, up to seated, and back to cross. That's going to be our little sequence that we can play with and vary and make it into our own. Cross. One knee transition. Hip key. Up, 2. Seated. Back to cross. So that's a little aerial dance sequence. I hope you had fun with that. Please learn each trick one at a time. Make sure you feel nice and confident with it. Do everything really low at first and then play with it. Add style, add spin, add swing, add your intentions, add your emotions, and have fun doing some aerial dance.